So, federal election is heading into the final days here. We've got just a few days left before most Canadians will cast their ballot on election day, and I'm in St. John, New Brunswick. And if you're planning on voting for a political party who is promising to shut down the energy sector or stop pipelines from being built, I want to show you something before you go to the ballot box in an attempt to change your mind. So I'm going to flip the camera here. I don't know if you can see this off in the distance. It's right in the middle of the screen, but there's a big tanker. It's a big tanker filled with oil. So that oil is from Saudi Arabia, and it heads off to a big refinery just around the corner here, the Irving refinery. And that oil, if you're anywhere in Eastern Canada, is what you're using to fill your car or to heat your home in some instances, or if you're getting on a bus, it's probably what's in the bus. So you have to ask yourself as a Canadian, do you want this oil that's in that tanker back there? Or do you want oil from Canada? Because the reality is that, we talk about transitioning to a clean energy economy, etc., but that doesn't happen overnight. There's not some sort of magic solution that's going to replace carbon for energy. It's not going to happen overnight. It's something that has to happen over a period of time. And in that period of time, you are still using energy, and that energy is coming from where? I'm just going to show you one more time. It's coming in that tanker in the distance there, right? The reality is that the Irving refinery here, which supplies a significant chunk of Canadian energy needs, imports oil from the United States, from Saudi Arabia, and the Canadian oil that it does use comes to the refinery via rail, which is one of the most unsafe ways to transport energy. So the question becomes, why on earth would we not be building a pipeline, right? You need to get somewhere. You need to do that in a car or some sort of vehicle that's powered by oil. Why wouldn't we be using Canadian energy to do that? Canadian energy is produced under much higher environmental standards. We're a democracy where I can run for office as a woman. Why would we be displacing our own clean energy products with, once again, the oil in that tanker? The other thing is, if you're voting for a party that wants to shut down the energy sector in Alberta or stop pipelines from being built out here, I want you to ask yourself two things. If you went to a hospital this year, where did that money come from to buy the hospital? If you're on, if you receive social assistance payments, or you go to a subsidized university, or you drive on a road that was paid for by public goods, where did that money come from? The reality is, in a lot of instances, in many provinces in Canada, those services, those public infrastructures, those public works are paid for by Alberta and the energy sector. We subsidize the country. The people in my province, the workers of the energy sector, subsidize the entire country through equalization payments. So if you're voting to shut down the energy sector, I want to physically show you what you're voting for. You're voting for that tanker of oil and that money and that prosperity to go to Saudi Arabia, instead of going to the jobs and workers of people here in St. John or across the country, right? Anybody who's telling you that somehow we have this substitute good for carbon right now, ask them to see it, because we don't. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be working towards that. And while we're working towards that, we should be using our resources to displace what? The oil in that tanker in the distance. We should be using our resources to promote jobs and growth in our own country. And if you want to talk about the clean energy transition, I used to work at the University of Calgary prior to entering politics. There's a lot of researchers there, and it's one institutions that are developing clean technology to make our energy production more clean, to develop alternative fuel sources like fuel cells, for example. And who funds that research? Where does that money come from? It comes from the wealth created by the energy sector, right? I am sitting here and I just think it's so important. I want all of you to look at this with me. When I look into this harbor and I see that tanker in the distance, what I see is lost jobs, ignorance, lost opportunity, lost revenue, and I frankly see a unity problem with our country. To me, that tanker is everything that is wrong with the debate on energy and the environment in our country. Right there. Full stop. If you're voting for somebody who's saying that they're stopping the pipelines or stopping energy sector development, you're voting for somebody who doesn't have any idea about how they're actually going to transition to a clean energy economy, because they're not going to have the resources to do it. And you're voting for somebody who is dividing our country. You know, I think about a time when we as a country built the Trans-Canada Highway or railways, pieces of infrastructure that united us in prosperity. A pipeline does the same thing. Why aren't we doing that today? And I want to be very clear to you, if you are voting for a party that doesn't want to build a pipeline or that wants to shut down the energy sector, you are voting against my province and the people in my province. And we would never do that to the rest of the country because we pay for the rest of the country. Enough is enough. If there is one image I want to sear into your brain on behalf of every person in my province, it's this. Look at that tanker in the distance. Look at it. That tanker doesn't need to be there. That tanker is filled with products that we should be supplying from Canada. That tanker represents losses of investments in social programs. It represents losses of jobs. It represents the division of our country. This is my last day of tour on this campaign. After this, I will be back in my riding 100% of the time. I'm here today with Rodney Weston, helping him get elected here in St. John, because there's people here that are like, why don't we have a pipeline? Why don't we have these jobs here? But this is my final pitch to you, and I'm looking at this. I am looking at that tanker right now, more determined than ever to unite our country in prosperity and ensure that the people of my province have the right to work. So when you go into the ballot box this Monday, and if you vote for a party, and it is any of the parties on the left, the Liberals, the NDP, or the Green, they've already said that they would enter into a coalition or implied that they would have, or not shut the door. I want you to understand that you are voting for that tanker. You are voting for the disunity of our country, and you are voting against prosperity. You are voting against a transition plan for the environment that involves Canadian energy that is produced under high environmental standards. That is what you're voting for. Don't do this. Our party has a strong environmental plan, and we have a plan to ensure that our economy grows. And this is my pitch to you. I'm going to keep working hard for the next 5 days, and I need you to make a decision that makes sense for this country. And that's to vote in favor of jobs, of growth, and just unity. Working hard for you in St. John. Have a great day.